Hi, I'm Geraldine Gallacher, and this is Shifting the Needle, a podcast for DEI professionals. And I have with me today Isla Thomas, and Isla is the head of the UK Carers Network for Deloitte. And as I understand it, Isla, the Carers Network is a subset of the Working Families Network. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, welcome, Isla. It's lovely to have you here to talk about what you do with carers and to talk for us to have a chat about being a carer more generally. Can I start with just asking you, because I know this isn't your full-time job.
No. Yeah.
So can I just ask you a little bit about what got you into being the head of the Carers Network for Deloitte?
Yeah, of course. So it was in 2019. I was working on another side of desk research project. I do research as my day job, and I was helping someone put together a survey to find out how we might best support working parents within Deloitte. And at that point, I had just stopped being a carer. Sadly, my dad had passed away, but I did say I felt maybe we could be advocating for carers a little bit more on this survey and making sure that we were speaking to them. At which point the person that I was speaking to said, "Good idea, let me find out how many carers there are." And she came back and said there was two. And I thought, there's no way there can be two people in an organization as big as Deloitte is. So at that point, she said, "You're right, we're not doing enough. Maybe we could champion a little bit more," and asked me if I could step into that role.
So I think that's very observant of you to make that call, actually. And you, as someone who was involved in the Parents Network or the Working Families Network, and at that time not a mother, but actually a carer. So to broaden that definition is something we at ECC have also done in recognition of the fact that we may not all be parents, but we certainly are all children of parents. And given the way the population is growing with respect to age and with Alzheimer's, then it's going to come to many of us, isn't it? The situation that happened to both of us with our mothers, actually having Alzheimer's. So that happened after you became head of the UK Carers Network.
Yeah, so when I was asked to go into that role, I was a little bit hesitant, if I'm completely honest, and I have been quite candid about this in the past, where I wasn't a carer at the time, and when I was a carer for my dad, I kept that quite invisible. That was a choice that I made. I wanted to keep my cards close to my chest and not share that openly. When I first joined Deloitte, there wasn't really much talk about carers, and I was meeting lots of people for the first time as a young professional. And I felt that I personally didn't really want that to be part of my identity. And I think that is because of not the culture at Deloitte, just the culture in the UK. It wasn't something that I had heard people talk about so openly. So I made that decision to keep those things close to me and invisible. But then when I was asked to fulfill that role, I thought, well, that's going to be a big step change, and I'm going to have to talk about things that are very, very sensitive so openly. And I didn't realize that I was then going to become a carer for my mum in 2020 as things go.
And I think what's quite unusual about you, Isla, is that you're quite young to be a carer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think carers come in all shapes and sizes and ages for sure, but I definitely think there is a myth that carers are of a certain age, and it's always for parents or grandparents, when actually you can be caring for absolutely anyone that's close to you, and that can be thrust upon you at any point in your life. I'm also still not a mother. I know you said earlier I wasn't a mother earlier, but don't want to shock my in-laws thinking that there's news that I haven't told them. But yes, I'm 29 at the moment. I became a carer for my dad in name when I was 19, but really my caring responsibility started when I was about 20, when his motor neuron disease had kind of progressed to the level where actually we were needing to physically care a little bit more.
And so the recent, if we just look at what governments do with respect to carers, the recent changes to the law, do you want to tell us a little bit about that, just for those people that are not familiar with the carers law?
Yeah, of course. So there's a piece of legislation that's been passed that means that any caregiver, employee caregiver, who is looking after someone with it's a long-term caregiving role, will be entitled to up to a week's unpaid leave by their employer. I think it's an incredibly exciting opportunity to provide support to people when they previously haven't had it. I think I have a lot of thoughts about the bill. I think it's a great first step. And I think it's a great opportunity to increase the visibility of carers within companies. But I do think unpaid leave is it's I can't remember the phrase that I had thought of previously, but I think it's a real luxury that a lot of people can't afford. So whilst I think it's going to be a great shifting the needle in terms of culture change, I think it needs to go a little bit more to support the people that desperately need it.
Is it a little bit like shared parental leave for men, where, or rather for the secondary carer, where it's all very well giving them the right to be able to share care, but if they don't get paid to do it, it's obviously going to fall to usually women as the primary carer to take the leave.
I think just unpaid leave in general, I've taken it before and it feels all well and good until you get that paycheck at the end of the month and actually you think, gosh, can I actually afford to have taken that leave? Would it have been better for me to just soldier on, really? But I do think it is a great first step, as I said.
Yeah. And so tell me, what about, or tell the listeners, what about specific challenges that as an employee caregiver, I think we can both talk to this, but I'd love to hear your own experiences of the challenges, because you're two different types of caregiving challenges for yourself. And so tell me about how that was and how that affects you at work and indeed generally.
Yeah, of course. So I'm still a carer for my mum. Unfortunately, we recently had to move mum to a care setting. So my role has changed ever so slightly, or quite a lot actually, in the last few weeks. But up until then, I was really, really hands-on with looking after mum in terms of an admin perspective, mostly. It's everything from liaising with care organizations like hospitals, GP, pharmacy, to organizing financial things. So speaking with banks and making sure that her finances are in the best place possible as her power of attorney. And then it's other ad hoc things like when you're on an important call, just in your work life, and then your phone's ringing to your left-hand side and it says no caller ID. And you know that you can't call that person back. And a lot of the healthcare providers do use no caller ID, understandably. So it's having to pause quite an important conversation and pick up that phone because you've been trying to get hold of that healthcare provider for days or weeks. So it's those unexpected things that I actually found really quite challenging. I used to joke that I've become almost an Oscar-winning actress because I would have really deep, dark conversations whilst off camera and then put my camera on and pretend like nothing had happened, even though I've just heard some negative news or had a frustrating conversation with a healthcare provider, when you really do have to bargain for the health support that you need at the moment. So yeah, there's so many challenges, and I've actually run a few workshops with carers within Deloitte as well to hear more about their experiences as well. And there's so many similarities, but of course, every caring responsibility is very different, and every situation is different. But I do think those are the big ones in terms of caring for someone else, let alone caring for yourself.
And you have siblings. You have two brothers.
Yes.
And likewise, I have siblings as well. And we were talking about how helpful that is to not be an only child, to have carer responsibilities. So how did you divide up the tasks? Two men and one woman? Did it divide across some kind of gender line, or was it not like that at all? Was it location specific?
So first and foremost, I'm incredibly grateful for my brothers as well. We have been such allies to each other, and I think we all have different strengths, and we lean into that. It hasn't always been smooth sailing, but we get on like friends and also like work colleagues as well, because there's a job to be done at the end of the day, and you need to kind of liaise with your counterparts. But essentially the way that we've divided it up with caring for mum is location based. So both of my brothers still live fairly close to mum, about a 10-15 minute drive away, whereas I've relocated to London, which isn't too far away. So about kind of a couple of hours on the train. So my brothers used to joke that I was London control centre, because I would be the one that was doing most of the admin because I couldn't physically be there as regularly as they could. Whereas, and if we had security cameras as well in the house just to make sure mum was safe because we had a couple of incidents with falls. So I would be constantly monitoring those cameras because I was just thinking about it a bit more. They have young children, so it just wasn't like at the front of their mind as much as it was for me. I'm also just a very empathetic person and very close to my mum. So I think I was always worrying about her and wanted to make sure she was okay. So I would check the cameras, and if something was awry, I would then get on the phone to them and they'd be there like a shot. So that's kind of how we've broken down our responsibilities. We tried a Trello board for management of tasks, but it didn't work so well. But we tried a few different
And
things.
did the Trello board come from London Control Centre by any chance?
That may have been the consultant in me, yes, trying to do it that way. I think just a bit of organization as well, because we all have great intentions, like in anything with anything in life, but when it actually comes to it, distractions come and you might get sidetracked. So I thought having a Trello board with a bit of accountability, adding our names to things might help shivvy some tasks along. Because we're actually, if I'm completely honest, we're still wrapping up kind of end of life things for my dad. We've still got accounts that we're trying to close, etc. Because companies don't make it that easy. And when you've got a busy life, things get in the way. So yeah, lots going on for us.
What's going on? So how prevalent, I know that you're head of UK network, so how prevalent now, rather than the two people in Deloitte that are carers, how prevalent, as far as you're aware, is it for employees to be caregivers?
So I actually don't know how many people have self-identified as carers. It's something that we do try and collect as an ongoing basis to try and get those figures. But what I can say is that we've set up some networks in terms of digital teams, communities. And I think we've got about 50 people in that. Okay. So we're working on it. We're trying to, through different mechanisms like social media campaigns. Carers Week always gets a lot of attention and investment to try and build the visibility there. But that community is slowly growing.
I think it's this reluctance, isn't there? Like you mentioned it, that, as a new starter, you weren't particularly wanting to introduce this element because you didn't want people to, I guess, well, tell me, what was your thinking?
My thinking was, I don't know if people are going to see Isla, the brand new consultant, or if they're going to see Isla the carer. And I didn't know whether that would be a positive discrimination. And I actually thought it probably would be, but I can't bear sympathy in terms of someone looking at me with kind of doughy eyes and feeling a bit sorry for me. So that was the decision I made. I was going to be the strong, independent consultant with nothing going on in her personal life. So no one could think any less of her or feel sorry for her. But I totally.
And now that you're 29, when you look back on that, do you think the culture has changed, or do you think you've changed, or both?
I think I was forced to change, but I knew it was the right thing in terms of speaking out a little bit louder. And I absolutely think that's been echoed and mirrored in the culture. I don't know if the culture was there to begin with and I just didn't test the waters, but I certainly think in terms of the networks that we have at Deloitte, there is such a culture of inclusion. And I'm sure there's examples where that's not perfect right now and there still needs to be more. Certainly I know it is for carers, but I really do feel like the leadership is listening and wants to listen and does want to keep being better year on year as we kind of develop this culture into a
movement.
Yeah, a movement. Yeah, lost the words there.
Isla, what kind of things do you think companies can do to be supportive of caregivers?
So when I was thinking about that in relation to some work that I've been doing recently, actually, there was a few recommendations that I made in terms of things that organizations can do. And it segues nicely from what we were just speaking about. Actually, I do think culture is the biggest one. So in terms of this, the carers bill and the right to unpaid leave, how do we build a culture that doesn't make people fearful or don't feel that they can lean into that right that they now have? How do we make it that their managers or their colleagues or the people who are junior on the team aren't going to think any differently from someone taking that leave that they need, and not questioning it? And so that's, I think, the primary thing. I think understanding. I also think training is a big thing as well. So coaching people to understand, if someone is in your team and if they have self-disclosed that they're a carer, how can you support them? How can you make them feel comfortable to talk at the right level at which they feel comfortable? So not prying too much, not making it an elephant in the room, just that right balance. I don't know what the answer is, but if there could be training for that, I think that would be perfect, so that it becomes just a lot more well understood, like it is for parents, I think, within employment.
I wonder if there is something to learn from the journey that parents have gone through with respect to cultural shift, in that we, for instance, very much recognised that although initially we were coaching women who were becoming pregnant and coaching them through the maternity transition, we began to realise that that was quite sexist, that actually some men want to be the primary carer too. So we now call it parental transition coaching. But one of the things, Isla, that we strongly believe in is coaching the system. And what I mean by that, or a manifestation of that, is to coach the manager of the person who's actually going through the process. And just listening to you makes me think how important it is that leaders understand how to handle people who have caring responsibilities. Just as much as it's important for them to understand when they have men and women that have new children. And so much of that is about, I don't know whether you've found that still today we find that some managers just get it and others don't. Is that the same when it comes to dealing with someone who's a carer?
If I'm honest, in my personal experience, I've only worked with managers who get it, which I feel very, very fortunate to have had. I think the difference between the translation from understanding and being able to give the support, maybe that's where we could do a little bit more of the training. Their heart is there. It's just, yeah, how best to support. But I really can say hand on heart that I've personally not had that experience. And when I've run these workshops with other carers that I work with, they've said exactly the same thing. It's, my manager's really supportive, but maybe an organization could be doing more. So yeah, I feel very, very blessed to work in an organization that I think has a culture that just gets it.
That
Yeah.
does get it. And I wonder if, just like with shared parental leave, I mean, Deloitte, for example, offer men as well as women the opportunity to have paid leave around the parental transition. So I wonder if that's a direction of travel where companies actually start to outstrip the government, because that's happened for quite a long time, hasn't it? Parental leave, where companies are giving more than they need to. I wonder if that will happen with, you mentioned that the bill only provides unpaid leave. I wonder if companies will start recognising the benefit of offering their employees paid leave for caring.
I really hope so. There is a lot of statistics online from various organizations that are championing this, that say, in terms of the company's bottom line, you have a lot to gain from offering paid leave. I can speak on a personal level that I know how distracted I've been day to day for years now. So being able to take that leave, and it being paid, would mean that I'm going to stay at a company even longer. I'm going to focus when I am there on my 9 to 5s. So because I know that next Monday I've actually got half a day where I can contact the GP, I can sort out the prescriptions that went wrong on the last pickup, I can look at some finances rather than trying to juggle it all in a day to day, which I do at the moment. I still get the job done, but it does mean that my days kind of bleed into the evening and then have less time to kind of recuperate before the next one begins. And I think that's a big issue as well, because all of the services that you use, their hours are 9 to 5 as well. So unless you're taking a day's holiday, Monday to Friday, there is no other time that you can do it. You could say your lunch break, but really you're going to be on hold for 40 minutes of that lunch break if you're trying to contact your GP then. So it just makes sense. And yeah, I think it makes financial sense for companies as well.
I absolutely agree. I remember when my mum was in a care home, it was so important that you phoned at a certain time. You couldn't just imagine you could phone whenever. Because they would all say, sorry, Geraldine, this is, we're doing the lunch, we're doing the medicines, we're doing this, we're doing that. There was always a difficult time. And of course, the very time they would suggest would be the perfect time to call, which wasn't necessarily the perfect time for you during the course of a working day. And I think, this identifying as a carer, I understand a lot of people don't actually see themselves in that light. So in its own right, it's quite important to give yourself a break and recognize that you are doing this. And part of that is sharing it. I too don't think I spoke about it a lot because, like you, I think it is, if the English are quite stiff upper lip, the Scottish, I think, are very much, we can do it without complaining. And that's where I think the coaching support can be so useful, because I think it can help with helping individuals to create some boundaries and to have those conversations.
Definitely. I think the self-identification is such an important issue that we need to consider when we're advocating for carers. I know personally, when my dad was first diagnosed with MND, and you get this pile of paperwork, and there must have been a few flyers that mention the word carers, and you just don't think about it. I hadn't heard that term before, so I just didn't think, oh, maybe that's what I'm going to become in the future. When my mum was then diagnosed, I was more aware, and I was straight on it. Yes, I am a carer. I should register myself with all of these things so I get the right emails. I understand about the benefits, although that's a whole another kettle of fish. But yeah, I think the self-identification thing is a massive one. My brothers barely think of themselves as carers now. I think it's such a personal thing, and it depends how you want to define yourself and whether you do want that to be part of your narrative that you now are.
And I think the sandwich generation is a huge issue at the moment as well, isn't it? Where we do have many men and women, but it's predominantly women. I think statistically, it's still more of the caregiving does fall to women when it comes to parents as to men. And they're stuck between, having both ailing parents and children still at school, because we have children older. So in a way, this isn't going to get easier, is it? I think the shifting generation, that tendency to actually have kids later, etc., and this, the prevalence of living longer means that this is only going to become a bigger thing. So I, like you, I do think organizations need to recognize the benefit of offering this as a benefit, paid leave in particular, as a benefit, would be such an attractor. And even more so, it's so sticky, isn't it? Once you've had that experience with an organization, we already know from stats that women who have well-supported parental transitions, who come through having babies in an organization where they've been well supported, we already know that they're far less likely to leave. They have a loyalty to it. Well, I think this is an opportunity to extend that to men and women who are carers. And with your carer network, is there a gender divide, or is it quite balanced?
I would say it's fairly balanced, yeah, with a whole host of reasons that people are carers. We actually recently got feedback that people wanted sub-communities within our wider network, within teams, so that they could organise themselves in terms of having more similar caring responsibilities. But within our wider group, if I kind of scroll down the list, I would say maybe it is 60-40, 75, 70-30. I wouldn't say it's hugely obvious that there is a gender divide.
Yeah, and in some ways, having more men in this bracket, I think, helps with that move towards a more inclusive culture. Because if men are being carers for elderly parents, then I think they can understand the benefits of moving the culture towards being more inclusive. What have you seen that Deloitte have done that you think, that was a really good move to do that, and you think helps Deloitte to stand out from the rest, if you like, as an employer?
Well, I think we certainly have some champions that above my pay grade in terms of people that are supporting the movement. Shout out to Rob Sturley. Thank you for everything. So Rob is the lead for the Working Families Network, and he really has fought tooth and nail to try and increase the visibility of carers. So I think those champions, and there are others, particularly if they are male, helps to build that picture of inclusivity and make people more aware. There's certainly other things like to build visibility as well. Our CEO does internal sessions called Ask the CEO, where lots of people join, thousands and thousands of people join, and they're able to put questions to the current CEO, and he answers them on the fly. And each time there's a guest host, and on one of them, I was asked if I would like to join as the host to put the questions to the CEO. And I think that was a great opportunity as well to build visibility, and it's giving those opportunities to carers and people within the network to be able to say their truth and speak about it and be very honest about their experiences so that other people can then get on board. So lots of new people joined the network following
That's
that
great.
event. There's also lots of social media campaigns as well with people high up in the company as well advocating their support for it. So it's all kind of building towards that increased inclusivity, which is really positive.
And any tips you've got for caregivers in terms of, I mean, you're now in your second phase of being a caregiver, a carer. Any tips from a kind of psychological perspective? How do you stay sane? How do you stay resilient?
It's a really good question. I actually have a tattoo on my ribs that says "a stout heart to a steep brae," which is something that my dad always used to say. It's a Scottish proverb, which means just keep tough. And I think that has always been my attitude, just keep tough, be brave. But I think now I've been a carer for so long, that's not the holy grail, and that's not the only approach. I think there is so much that we need to be doing to look after our own well-being so that we don't burn out. And I think this unpaid leave is a great step. It will give us, those that can afford the opportunity to have unpaid leave, the opportunity to step back, and whilst you're doing your caring responsibilities, do take some time for yourself as well. I think it's so important. And I think having a great support network as well, I'm very blessed. I have a great supportive partner who will do anything that I ask and more, and does things without me asking. Great friends that are always wanting to know how they can best support. Two fantastic brothers as well. So I think if there are people that are close to you, and I think you learn quickly those people that you feel comfortable talking to, and those people who are great friends, but they're great friends to go for a glass of wine and don't talk about caring because you don't like how they talk about it or how they respond, which is absolutely fine. They have the best interest and they can support you in other ways. I think sometimes if I'm out and about, I don't want to be thinking about being a carer. I just want to pretend that I'm normal and kind of compartmentalize my life. But that support network, I think, is so paramount to my survival, really. That's my key. Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting that the proverb is the be strong, but in a sense, I think certainly when we're coaching people, and my own personal understanding of how best to support myself during this experience I had with my mum, was actually sometimes being vulnerable was not such a bad thing as well. Whereas I think I honestly think it just didn't come naturally to me to express what was going on in a general day-to-day basis. But I genuinely believe, and lots of you will have heard of The Power of Vulnerability by Brené Brown. But I do think there's a lot in what she says about, for true compassion, you have to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, if you can be vulnerable as a carer, and I think you've been very vulnerable today by opening up and telling your story and sharing some of your tips and your experiences with us, Isla. So I'd like to wrap it up by just saying thank you very much. And to those of you that are listening to us, I hope that there were some aspects of today that touched you, that informed you, maybe even inspired you. And thank you very much, Isla, yet again.
Thank you so much, Geraldine. It was great. Thank you.